Hello, today we're going to be making a custom Dr. Hooves brushable. To start, I cut the neck plug from the body to access the tail, and then I drilled extra holes in the head to make more volume for the hair. For the hair, I'm going to be using 100% acrylic yarn because it works best with heat styling. Using yarn as hair is the best method if you really want textured, detailed haircuts in your ponies. I first start by wrapping the yarn around something that's around 2 to 3, maybe 4 inches, and I keep doing this until I think that I have enough. With yarn, you're going to want to do way more than you think that you need because you're going to have to brush it out a lot, and therefore it's going to shed almost half its weight. Once I think I'm done, I remove the yarn from whatever I wrapped it around, and then I go down the middle and cut it on only one side. Once I'm done, I take a small section of the yarn and begin splitting each individual thread. This is around 2 to 3 hours of work, sped up into under a few minutes, by the way. Once I'm done, I take my straightener and put it up to 290 degrees Fahrenheit. I find that this is the sweet spot for straightening the yarn without damaging it or frizzing it. Start by taking a small section of the threads that you made and pass it through the straightener as many times as needed until it's mostly straight without brushing. Wrapping the threads around your finger helps anchor them so that they don't continuously come out while you're trying to straighten or brush them. Once you're done straightening, they'll look something like this. I'm going to go ahead and speed up me doing this whole process because it is pretty tedious. Once I'm done, I like to take a fine-tooth comb, such as an edge brush or otherwise, and brush through all the threads. The threads are going to shed a lot from the brushing, but this is all part of the process. Once fully brushed, you can alternate between brushing and straightening to achieve full straightness. Now that we're done, it's time for the base coat. For this I'm using Cali Art acrylic paint, which can be found on Amazon. I'm going to start with a white base and then slowly add my brown colors. Once I reach my desired color, I'm going to start by painting over the scalp. I find that painting my pony in this order allows for the least amount of damage when reassembling. I go ahead and do the same thing around the tail of the pony. I like to paint the scalp the color of the hair for a guide and also just in case it peeks through. This also gives you a way nicer finish. Now that we're finally done, we can start rerouting. Simply wrap a piece of the yarn around your finger and then slide it through the eye of the needle. Then slowly push it through the hole of the scalp. You want to avoid putting too much hair in the needle and then also using too much pressure. Both of these can end up breaking the needle. For the tail, I take a chunk of hair and wrap a piece of thread around it. This allows me to feed the tail through the hole. Once through, I secure the tail by using silicone-based glue. You can use E6000 or other brands. I do the same thing to properly secure the hair from inside the head. Skipping this step may lead to your hard work falling out. To ensure coverage, I take a stick and move around the glue within the head to make sure all plugs are covered. Next, I reassemble the neck peg using super glue. To make the head easier to go on, you can heat up the plastic around the neck area. If you can't tell, this is why I wait to paint the pony. Once the glue has dried, I like to touch up any curly pieces of the hair. To keep his hair neat, I give it a little trim. Now that we're done, we can finally paint the base. To get a smooth base, I like to mix half the amount of paint that I'm using with water. This helps to avoid any streaking that the brush may create. As you can see, I eventually remembered that I forgot to make his nose thicker. So now I'm going to be using Magic Sculpt epoxy clay to make his nose. This brand is very good if you're looking for an epoxy clay that allows you to make very detailed work. Now that we're done, I have to wait for it to harden. I go ahead and clean up any messes that were made during the process. Now that we're ready to paint the base again, I'm going to be protecting his hair. I should have done this from the start, but I was being a bit lazy, I will admit. I do this by pinning a piece of plastic through the scalp. Now that that's done, it's time to do the same thing to the tail. Let's continue painting the base. After some time, I got to a nice stopping point. To start painting the eyes, I make a white base shape. On the other side, I make a very light sketch of where I want to paint. To do the eye color, I mix a light and dark shade of blue. First, I do the lightest part of his eye. Next, I do the darkest shade. Once done, I mix the two into a mid-tone, which I use to make a gradient. Next, I do the pupil. Using straight black is probably the most nerve-wracking part of the whole process. After that, it's time to add the eye shines. Now we get to do one of my favorite parts, which is the cutie mark. Once I'm done painting, I save the hooves for last because they tend to get dirty throughout the whole process. To protect the hooves, I use a piece of tape that I stuck to the back of my hand a few times to make it a bit less sticky. Now it's time to free Dr. Hooves' luscious hair. I go ahead and fix any damages. Since a bit of paint did get on his hair, I used the comb to pick it out. Sadly, at this point, I realized that the haircutting process was not recorded, but this is how it turned out. I cover his body and spray his hair with hairspray. Thankfully, you can still watch me cut the tail even though it's a bit less entertaining. For areas where the hair is too thick, I use thinning shears. To make his spiky layers, I make diagonal channels down the tail. This is how he looks after his haircut. The last step of this process is to make his tie. I use a piece of scrap paper to map out a design. Once I'm happy with how it looks, I trace the design on a piece of felt. I did realize that there was a small gap, but that's okay because we can fix it. I then cut out his tie. To make his tie green, we're just going to paint it with a mix of acrylic paints. I used a roll of tape to contain the tie while I was blow drying. I used super glue to attach his collar and tie. Dr. Hooves is finally finished. Here's the big reveal. Thank you so much for watching to the very end. I absolutely love how this Dr. Hooves came out. If you enjoy my art and want to see more, feel free to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. See you again soon.